Welcome to another episode of the MemcycoFM show.
It's great to be back.
We have a really interesting one today. We're looking at a headline that, on the surface, it just looks like your standard financial news.
Right. Company X raises Y amount of dollars.
Exactly. But when you actually read the press release and look at who's involved, you realize, wait a minute, this isn't just about money. This is about a massive strategic shift in the world of cybersecurity.
It really is. We're talking about Memcyco, that's Memcyco, for anyone wondering, and their recent Series A funding announcement.
And the numbers are definitely not small. They've just secured $37 million.
Which brings their total funding up to $47 million.
That's a serious war chest.
It is, but honestly, if we just focus on the dollar amount, we completely miss the point.
Oh.
The real story here is what that money signals.
Okay.
It signals that the battleground for fraud has, it's fundamentally shifted, and the industry is finally putting real capital behind a new way to fight it.
I want to dig into that shifting battleground idea because I think that's the real hook here. Usually when we talk about funding, we talk about valuations or, the next unicorn.
Sure.
But you're saying this is more like a mandate.
It absolutely is a mandate. I mean, if you look at the language the investors are using and the language Memcyco's leadership is using, it's clear the old way of doing things is failing.
The fortress mentality, as you called it.
Exactly. This $37 million is basically the market saying, we're done trying to clean up the mess.
Yeah.
We need to start preventing it.
Which feels like a perfect place to start because the context for this funding is, well, the numbers are just intense. The press release lays it all out, and it's not a pretty picture.
No, it's not.
We're looking at a 250% spike in account takeover attacks, ATOs, just in the last 2 years.
Just 2024 and 2025.
That's a vertical line on a graph.
It is staggering.
Yeah.
250%. And you have to realize that isn't just more hackers. That's a fundamental change in the efficiency of the attacks.
And the cost that comes with that efficiency. They're projecting online payment fraud losses to hit $343 billion by 2027.
$343 billion. That's a GDP-sized number. That's an economy in and of itself.
So let's unpack this a bit, because I think a lot of people, even smart people in this industry, might look at that and say, hang on, we have never spent more on cybersecurity than we are right now.
That's true.
CISOs have huge budgets. We have firewalls, endpoint detection, encryption, you name it. So why, with all that spending, are the losses still skyrocketing?
It's the classic problem of fighting the last war.
Yeah.
We spent, the last 2 decades hardening the infrastructure.
Right.
We built thicker walls, deeper moats, better locks on the server room doors. And the attackers just looked at that and said, okay, that looks hard. I'm not going to bother breaking into the server. I'm going to target the human.
The human layer.
The human layer. Exactly.
Yeah.
Why spend months trying to crack a 256-bit encryption key when I can just trick you into giving me the password? And that's what's changed. The attackers have moved from the infrastructure to the customer.
And the tools they have to do this now, this isn't the old days, right? We're not talking about some guy in a basement manually typing out emails one by one.
Oh, not even close.
Yeah.
This is industrialized fraud. We're talking about AI-driven automation.
Yeah.
We're talking about off-the-shelf fish kits you can buy on the dark web for, like, pennies.
I've seen some of those kits. They are terrifyingly user-friendly. You don't need to be a coder.
No. You just click a button and it clones a website. One-click cloning. That's the reality. A scammer can duplicate a brand's entire digital presence. The logos, the layout, the fonts in seconds.
So when a customer gets a text message and clicks a link, they aren't seeing some sloppy knockoff.
Not anymore. They're seeing something that looks pixel perfect. It looks exactly like their bank.
And that's the nightmare scenario for a brand, right? Because your customer thinks they're interacting with you. They trust the logo on the screen, but they're actually just handing their keys over to a stranger.
And that brings us to the core problem Memcyco is solving. Israel Mason, the CEO, he had a quote in the release that I think just frames this perfectly.
What do you say?
He said, enterprises have spent billions building fortress walls around their login pages, but attackers have moved the battlefield.
I love that analogy because it's so visual. It's like a bank installing a state-of-the-art vault, door finest steel, time locks, lasers, the works. But the robbers aren't even entering the building. They're just standing in the parking lot, dressed like security guards, taking people's deposits before they even get to the front door.
That is exactly it. And the bank inside the fortress, they have no idea it's happening.
Right. They're checking the cameras in the lobby. Everything looks peaceful.
Meanwhile, customers are getting robbed outside, and this is what we call the visibility gap.
The visibility gap. I want to drill down on this because for the CSOs listening, visibility is everything. You can't stop what you can't see.
You can't. And traditional tools are completely blind to this pre-login activity. I mean, think about multi-factor authentication, MFA. It's a critical tool. We absolutely need it, but when does it actually kick in?
When I type in my password and hit login.
Right, at the login stage. But in this new landscape of impersonation attacks, the deception has already happened way before that.
The damage is done.
The damage is done. The user has been on the fake site for minutes. They've been navigating, reading, interacting. By the time they might trigger an MFA request, or worse, by the time the attacker uses those stolen credentials to trigger a real login, it's already too late.
So the attacker is essentially just bridging that gap. They use the fake site to capture the real-time codes, pass them to the real site, and they're in.
And the enterprise.
Yeah.
They usually only find out about the scam days later when the customer calls support furious because their account is empty.
Which puts the whole enterprise in this terrible reactive position, just cleanup mode.
And nobody wants to be on the cleanup crew. Cleanup is expensive, it's legal fees, it's reimbursements, and it's the hardest thing to quantify, but the most expensive thing to lose, reputation.
Steve Paguka, one of the key investors in this round, he actually used that phrase. He talked about the industry needing to stop cleaning up the fraud mess after an event.
That is the shift.
Yeah.
That's what this Series A is funding. It's a move from reactive cleanup to preemptive protection.
Okay, so let's talk about the solution, because logically this seems incredibly difficult. If the attack is happening on a fake website that the bank doesn't own,
Right.
hosted on some server the bank doesn't control, often in a different country,
Right.
how on earth does Memcyco stop that? How do you protect a user out there on the wild web?
This is where the technology gets really fascinating. Memcy describes their platform as agentless and day zero. But the phrase that really stuck out to me was that it infiltrates the attack timeline.
Infiltrates the timeline. That sounds fantastic, but what does that actually mean in practice?
It means they don't wait for the user to come home to the safe, legitimate website. Their technology is capable of working before, during, and as the customer interacts with the scam.
So going back to our parking lot analogy, this is like having invisible security guards stationed out in the parking lot who can spot the fake guards instantly.
In a sense, yes. It provides real-time visibility into both the victim, the customer being tricked, and the attacker's behavior. They can see the session unfolding.
That's wild. So they aren't just looking at server logs after the fact, they're seeing the interaction as it happens.
And because they can see it, they can intervene. That's the preemptive part. They can change what the user sees on the screen. They can alert the user that the site is fake right then and there.
Wow.
They can even feed the attacker fake data, so the credentials they steal are completely useless. They stop the fraud before the transaction ever happens.
That is a game changer. It's not just flagging it for a takedown request that might happen in 3 days.
No, this is stopping the bleeding right now. Real-time outcomes. And we really need to touch on the agentless part you mentioned, because for the tech folks listening, that's a crucial detail.
Yeah, clarify that. Agentless means I, as the customer, don't have to install a thing.
Not a single thing. And that is so vital. Think about the friction involved in security. If a bank sends out an email saying, "Dear customer, to be safe, please download and install this specific security plugin for your browser," what happens?
99% of people ignore it. The other 1% think the email itself is a scam.
Exactly. Friction kills adoption. If you require installation, you fail. Memcyco's tech just works in the background. It protects the user without them having to change their behavior at all.
This brings up the concept of digital trust. We see that phrase in marketing decks all the time, and it can feel a little fluffy.
It can.
But here it feels tangible. If a brand can actually protect me, even when I accidentally land on the wrong site, that builds a ton of trust.
It moves digital trust from a slogan to a feature. It makes it operational. And honestly, I think that reality, that operational capability, is what attracted this specific group of investors.
Let's pivot to those investors, because when I looked at the list for this $37 million round, it wasn't just the usual suspects from, Sand Hill Road.
No, it's a very strategic list. The round was led by Naventures, Elion Jimenez, and the PAGS Group.
And participation from existing investors like Capri Ventures and Venture Guides.
Right.
The one that really jumps out at me is Naventures. That's the corporate venture arm of the National Bank of Canada.
It should jump out. That's a huge deal.
Why is that so significant?
Because they aren't just an investor looking for a return. They're a bank. They're a customer. There's a quote from Joshua Leback of Ventures that I circled in my notes.
Ah.
He said, as both a customer and investor, we have experienced how Memcyco enhances protection and streamlines processes.
That is a huge distinction. Usually a VC is betting on a vision or a pitch deck. Here, the bank effectively tried before they invested.
It's the ultimate market validation. I mean, banks are incredibly risk-averse institutions. They have to be.
Yeah.
They don't just throw millions of dollars at unproven security tools.
Right.
For a major bank to say, we use this, it provided clear insights, it prevented issues, and then write a check. That tells you this isn't vaporware. This works in a live, high-stakes environment.
And then you have the PAGS group.
Mhm.
Steve Pagliuca is the founder there, but he's also a senior advisor to Bain Capital. He's seen it all. He knows how industries shift.
And he didn't mince words about the problem. He called the scale of digital impersonation an existential threat to the digital economy.
Existential threat. That's heavy language. He's not saying it's a nuisance. He's saying it's a threat to existence.
But is he wrong? Think about it. The entire digital economy is built on one thing: trust. If you can't trust that the website you're on is the real website, if you can't trust that the login screen is safe, you stop logging in, you stop transacting, commerce just stops.
That's a chilling thought. If that trust evaporates, the entire digital channel collapses.
Exactly. Pagliuca noted that Memcyco is unique because it prevents the mess entirely. And I think that really is the thesis of this whole deep dive. The market is exhausted from cleanup tools. They're tired of the mop. They want to turn off the faucet.
So we've got the tech, the money, the validation. But let's talk scale. Because having a cool tool that works in a lab is one thing. Protecting millions of users across the globe is another. Is Memcyco actually scaling?
The numbers in the release suggest they are well on their way. They reported a 3-year-over-year increase in annual recurring revenue. They've tripled their customer base.
And for the security leaders listening who want the hard metrics, the what have you done for me lately stats, they've prevented over 3.5 million ATO attempts.
Just pause on that number for a second. 3.5 million. That is 3.5 million people who didn't get their accounts drained.
Right.
The 3.5 million support tickets that didn't need to be opened. That's millions of dollars in potential losses that just disappeared.
And they've mapped more than 500 million device identities.
Which is a massive data lake. That gives them a view of the landscape that very, very few others have. And again, they did all of this without adding friction to the user experience.
So with $47 million in the bank now, what's the plan? Where does the roadmap go from here?
The headline is global expansion. But specifically, they highlighted Latin America.
That's interesting. Why LATAM specifically?
Well, Marcos J. Jorge from Elian Jimenez, one of the lead investors, he pointed this out. The LATAM region is currently facing a very sophisticated wave of impersonation scams. It's a hotbed for this specific type of fraud right now.
It seems like that region often leapfrogs technology trends. They adopted mobile payments and instant transfers faster than the U.S. did in a lot of ways.
They did. And that speed, that mobile-first adoption, it makes them a prime target for digital impersonation. Marcos noted that the agentless nature of Memcyco is a game changer there.
Because of the device diversity.
Exactly. If you're trying to protect a massive, diverse consumer base in Brazil or Mexico or Colombia, you can't rely on everyone having the latest iPhone or installing the latest security patch.
You got people on all kinds of devices, old and new.
Right. You need protection that works on any browser, any device, with zero installation.
So Memcyco is taking this preemptive protection model and essentially stress testing it in one of the most challenging, fast-moving fraud environments in the world.
It's a bold move, but the logic holds up. If you can win there against that level of sophistication and volume, you can win anywhere.
So let's zoom out as we wrap this up. We've talked about the funding, the tech, the investors, the global strategy. What does this all mean for the CISO or the fraud lead listening to this right now?
I think the big takeaway is that the definition of your perimeter has changed. This Series A isn't just cash, it's a mandate. The industry is admitting that reactive takedowns, sending a lawyer to get a site taken down 3 days later, is just too slow. It's useless.
It's over. It's over. We have to shift to proactive, real-time disruption. It really feels like the CISO's job description just got bigger. You aren't just protecting the server anymore.
That's a huge shift in thinking.
It is. And here's the thought I want to leave everyone with. If we can infiltrate the attacked timeline before the login, does the definition of enterprise security need to expand? Does the security team now have to own the open internet where the brand lives, not just the data center where the database lives?
That is a massive question.
Yeah.
Because if the brand is the asset And in 2026, the brand is the asset. Then protecting the brand is protecting the company.
Exactly. And technologies like Memcyco are the first step in giving security teams eyes and ears in that wild open space. You can't defend what you can't see. And now you can finally see it.
Well, this has been a fascinating look at what $37 million actually buys you in the fight against fraud. It buys you a time machine, essentially, the ability to stop an attack before it even happens.
A time machine for fraud. I like that. If you're listening to this and you're running a security team or a fraud team and you're just thinking, I'm so tired of being on the cleanup crew, you probably want to see what this looks like in practice.
You definitely do. It's one thing to hear us talk about infiltrating the timeline, but seeing it happen in real time is something else entirely.
So if you want to see what that preemptive protection looks like, just head over to the Memcyco website and book a demo. See the solution in action and decide for yourself if it's time to move your battlefield.
It's definitely worth the time.
Thanks for tuning in to this deep dive on Memcyco's big news. We'll catch you on the next one. Stay safe out there.